This is Jonathan St. James, and you're listening to The Truth is Still Straight podcast. All right, folks, it's once again The Truth is Still Straight, and I am your host, Jonathan St. James, along with Jim and Donnie St. James. Hey, how are you doing, sirs?
Hey, good evening. How are you guys doing?
And then missing is Dawn M. Kane, as well as LaDonna Marie and Danica, of course, who's on a world tour somewhere. We wish her well on her journey. But all right, folks, let's see what's going on in the universe here. The Team USA lost against France in the opening round of the Olympics in terms of basketball. Very interesting. You know, a lot of people want to say, well, it's because the rest of the world has caught up to the NBA players. But I disagree with that. I think it's a lack of discipline. Not that the players have caught up to the NBA players. I think the issue to me is that the style of play, and there's LaDonna Marie. And she gets on. Hey, LaDonna Marie, how are you? As soon as she joins on, hopefully she can. Uh-oh, I'm hearing myself. LaDonna Marie, you there?
Hey, I'm here, y'all.
I'm getting a feedback somewhere.
I can hear her.
Okay, it's good now. Yeah, that was weird. I got a feedback real quickly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so LaDonna Marie is in a secret location. She can't divulge her video just yet until, you know, wherever she's at, she gets safe. It's the security team drops her in her kibitz. All right. So again, we were talking about the opening game for Team USA. They lost. And basically the point that I was making was that I think the level of play is a lot lazy with the NBA players. So I think that's what the problem is, that a lot of these teams are beating them. But I thought what was interesting is they had a slight controversy, which wasn't a controversy, where the women's gymnastic team did not march in the opening ceremony, and they tried to turn it into a controversy. But I forget which athlete spoke on it, and they said the reason why they generally don't march in the opening ceremony is because their trials, their games tend to start the next morning, so they need time to rest and stuff like that. So the history is on that side. So I believe that, you know, I don't think it's any controversial reason why they didn't march, because they said they've done it in the past. So, you know, sometimes people just want to make controversy off of stuff that shouldn't be controversial. So, all right, what else is going on? Okay, LaDonna Marie, let's talk about you real fast. Can you hear us? Let's talk about what's going on with you, your books and stuff, and what's the latest with you?
Hey, everybody. Hi, listeners. So what's going on with me? I am still excited about the journey of the path, the way I see it. I mean, the book is amazing because it helps people to overcome obstacles and it helps them to heal. And it shares more of my life to help them to see how I've journeyed through. I have been on this authenticity journey to help people to know that, you know, we're all going to go through different things and the way that we handle them. And so I'm excited about the book. I'm excited about, you know, I have a paperback out, I have a hard copy. This is book 12. And so I wanted to do something just to signify, you know, the 12th book that I've put out into the earth. So it's going really good. I've been on a couple of pop-up shops on some Sundays. So I've been, you know, away doing that, you know, really, really excited. And I have some coming up, you know, back to school is coming up. We're doing some things in the local city here for back to school. So I'll be doing that. And also, excuse me, for my nonprofit for planting positive seeds, you know, we're doing a encouragement summit on August the 27th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. roughly. And we want to invite all girls that are ages 13 to 18. It's a free conference. And, you know, if anyone wants to register, they can go over to plantingpositiveseeds.com and just click that button and register for the free conference. And I'm just excited. Whatever God wants me to do, I'm here with you all. you're trying to get in where I fit in so I can hear and talk to the listeners. But I mean, I think that's about it. Oh, and my podcast is coming up on a year's anniversary on the 27th. And so I'm excited about that on July 27th. I've been and had it a year, coming back from 2014 when I first started it. And so it's about to be a year. And I'm excited about a whole year of staying focused.
Now, could you tell the viewers what how did they find your podcast?
Yeah, so it's called Inspirational Talks with LaDonna Marie. Like I said, God gave it to me in 2014 to help to still plant positive seeds in the lives of others. So it's a initiative of my nonprofit to plant positive seeds in others. We talk about the guests that come on. They talk about their some of the things that they've overcame in their lives, and then they also talk about the triumphant moments, things that God has helped them to overcome. I've had sickle cell. I've had children with cerebral palsy. Their parents come on. Some cancer survivors in remission. A lot of different things, domestic violence, a lot of different survivors, and they come on and they share their story, because I feel that it's very important for us to share our story so that other people can know that they don't have to stay stuck. And, often I talk about me being a suicide survivor, and so I wanted to have a platform that people can come and share how they've overcame and can help the listeners to come through. And it's on Anchor, it's on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen, you can listen. Spotify, you can just type in Inspirational Talks with LaDonna Marie, and you can jump on to listen to us. We're coming up on season 3. We usually have about 15 to 20 episodes in every season. So now we're going to move into season 3 in August.
So a question that I have: how do you divide your seasons? When does the season start, and when do you stop it, and then when do you start it up again?
So normally the season starts in July. So this year it's like from July to December, and then from January to June. And then we usually start back over in July. So I have decided that we're going to do 15 to 20 shows per season. This time for the second season, I'm right at 19 shows. Okay. So the one on Monday will be the 20th one for the second season, and then we'll move into season 3. And I'm excited about it because I want to break it up so that so we can get new listeners, do different things with it, and also just take a break and come up with some new ideas into getting people to listen, what I want for the guests, and just making sure that the vision is still what the Lord wants me to do for the show.
Sounds good. So everybody who's listening, I know most of you tend to listen on Anchor. So those of you listening on Anchor, check out the show. We'll definitely start posting it at least on my Facebook, and then we'll post it in the Straight to Truth group so everybody could check it out on there. We're trying to grow the YouTube. Is slowly growing, but right now everybody seems to. I've been forcing people or trying to get them to move over to YouTube, but everybody's like, oh, what's happening with the podcast? And of course, the podcast is some episodes behind the YouTube channel. But I said I would stop putting these episodes back on. But yeah, I'll do my best to do that relatively soon so people can start back up listening. I don't know what's so hard about people just moving over to YouTube, but it is what it is.
Right. And I have, I'll show in my link tree. So like in the link tree on Instagram or anywhere they follow me, when they go in, they'll see both shows. They see our show that I'm a co-host, and they'll see my show. So we're on there. Just keep putting it out there. And I share it on Twitter and stuff, just like I share anything else. And so they'll come back and listen. We have good ideas.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Donnie. So Jim, do you have anything that's going on with you, or should I just find out what's going on with Donnie over there?
You skipped to Donnie. Ain't not much going on this side. Thank you.
All right. Okay. That's enough bullying people. All right. Donnie, what's going on with you? I know you've been kind of busy this summer. You've been up to a couple of things. What do you have going on?
Uh, just working and all that. Honestly, I want to throw in. You know how you usually give some sort of complaint about something.
Yeah. Please give a complaint
Uh,
if you have one.
my complaint, real quick, because you usually talk about a movie or something. I just need to say that Fast and Furious needs to be stopped. I went and watched that movie yesterday, and the fact that they sent a car on a jet into space, I can't keep up anymore.
Was Jeff Bezos in that car by any chance?
If only it would have been more entertaining.
Yeah, to be honest, I've actually been against the movie ever since Paul Walker passed away. It's interesting how they sort of made. So in the beginning, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel started the movie together, and for some reason, Vin Diesel decided he didn't want to be in the movie. So then the second one came out. That's when they had Tyrese in it with Paul Walker, and it did pretty well. So I guess at the end of the fake Tokyo Drift, that Vin Diesel decided he wanted to come back, and then Paul Walker died, and all of a sudden it was I don't know how we're going to continue with this movie, and next thing you know, they're continuing on like the guy was never in it. And to me, it's not the same without Paul Walker, because he was literally, with the exception of Tokyo Drift, he was literally in all the Fast and Furious movies. And it's not like he's not in it because he didn't want to be. He's not alive to be in it. And just the fact, I'm like, it's just getting more outrageous than the one before. It's very hard to watch these movies. Like, a car in outer space. Next, they had them jumping submarines. And, it's ridiculous here.
They acknowledge it. They acknowledge it too, because they have Tyrese talk about, like, how we always do crazy things and nobody ever even gets hurt. And then they just brush past it right after.
Yeah.
They also they reference him in the Paul Walker's character,
and he's still alive in the movie, right?
Yeah, right.
He's still alive. So he's not dead.
They get Vin Diesel's kid to go get babysitting from him, and then at the end of the movie, they show his car pulling up to the house, which I thought maybe was a little bit much.
Yeah, but you know what? I'd rather them keep him alive than kill him off. Yeah. Even if you have to put a CGI like from a distance, they sort of did that in the movie that he died making, because there were some scenes that were unfilmed. I think they used like his brother as a stand-in for the scenes where he was in. I don't mind that, because they did the same thing in Star Wars with Carrie Fisher, because she died before making the last one. So I don't really have a problem with that, but come on, put the movie to bed. There's something else. There's some other movie I forget what it is. There's another movie that they just won't let die. These movies, they had A Quiet Place. It's just ridiculous. You can't go to, then they're going to have more Halloween movies. I'm like, come on, let's do something else for a change. Let's have let's have some new innovative movies out there. Yeah. So it's out I guess it's only out in theaters, because I didn't see it anywhere else, right, Donnie?
Yeah. I watched it in theater.
Yeah, because I didn't see, maybe it's on bootleg sites, but yeah, I wish they would have did streaming, but that's okay. I know they're trying to get people. What did you go to AMC? What theater did you go to?
No, I went to Regal. Also, I think is Universal the ones that make that movie?
Universal.
Yes, it's Universal.
Yeah, I think they had an entire thing where they weren't into the streaming concept.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think they even pulled all of their movies out of AMC because they were discussing something like that. I don't know if it's still in effect, but that was the whole thing.
And where did you go? What theater did you go to? Union Square?
No, over in Delancey.
Oh, Delancey. How's that theater? I haven't been there. I know this is like foreign to you, LaDon Marie, because you're in a different location. But
Delancey, I've been here.
How was the Delancey theater?
They have recliners and they got a bar and all that. It's a cool place.
Yeah, well, Delancey is pretty shishi over there. So for those of you who are not familiar with New York City, Delancey Street is basically one of the main hubs of the Lower East Side at the border of like Chinatown, and to the west you have like Soho and stuff like that. Right? Yeah, Soho, yes, because it is below Houston Street. Because Soho, for those of you who don't know, some people, they just have to nickname everything. So Soho is south of Houston Street, and then NoHo is north of Houston Street, and then they have little nicknames for every little thing. These modern day Adams, I tell you, they just want to rename everything. So unfortunately, if you're from out of town, you would not recognize Houston Street because you would probably pronounce it Houston. But we have old world pronunciations for many words, and I believe Houston is an old world pronunciation for Houston, I believe, from my understanding, because we're Dutch and Old English settlement. So a lot of the pronunciations come from where even some of the names, they actually had to rename a lot of the cities, because the towns in Brooklyn neighborhoods, because of the way that they were spelled, because they were spelled in the European fashion that most people couldn't read, like Bushwick. I think Flatbush is another one. I can't think of what else was renamed, but a lot of those places were renamed to English versions. So Houston, I think, is one of those. And then we have one in Brooklyn. I can't even pronounce it. Everybody, the hood calls it Kosciuszko. I believe it is referred to as Kosciuszko. I believe Kosciuszko. And then what else is like that? Oh, we have a wonderful one. Puerto Ricans will say Graham, but of course, you know it as Graham, like graham crackers, Graham Avenue. That's one of those places that, it's Puerto Ricans cannot seem to pronounce. But it's very interesting. Now that we're getting out of the complaint, but into pronunciations, the things that people can't pronunciate. So I was speaking to a Dominican woman the other day, and she couldn't pronounce E, and she was E, like the word E, and that she was pronouncing it I. But I was like, how do you pronounce I when there's no I in Spanish? Like, I don't get that. So, a lot of times what people from Spanish speaking countries do, they'll talk about things based on their pronunciations, because one, there's no phonetics and stuff like that. So they'll say E like a E would be and then I would be E. So for her to pronounce something with an I was like, how do you get I when there's no pronunciation for I in Spanish? So that was just very bizarre. But I know, like, my mom was born in Puerto Rico, and she used to pronounce CHSH and SHCH, and I couldn't get it. I'm like, you say children, but you'll say, SHIT, you'll say ch. And I'm like, what's going on there? Like, and then she would pronounce CK as a G, because one time my brother came in and she was upset with him, and she said, oh, you think you're a duck? And I was like, a duck? What are you trying to say? Then she was like, a Doug. And then a Doug, what is a Doug? Well, she was trying to say thug, but she couldn't get the TH and the G. So it's just really interesting how pronunciations are done. All right, enough of that. So, okay, let's get into the show now. All right, so today I want to do something different, and I think is important really to have honest and frank discussions about relationships, because I find a lot of times it's the simple things that people gloss over and focus too much on the complicated. So what does that mean? Okay, so today's topic is really going to be the simple communications of relationships. Let me write that down. Okay, now what do I mean by that? So basically, we're talking about what is it that people seem to get in communication, and what is it that people seem to miss. So I think really I would just want to start off in talking about communication and what it means to relationships, because I think a lot of times when we talk about communicating, people don't know what that really is. And a lot of times people think that it's about meeting someone and saying what they like, what they don't like, and then that's it. But also there's a level of peace that communication should bring. So you'll have people that they'll say what they want, but then they won't bring peace into the communication in terms of getting along with the other person. So I think the best thing to do is talk about communication, how important communication is in relationships, and then get into the little nuances about communication. So LaDonna Marie, of course, you're always the first up at bat. So I'll start off with you, Jim, Donnie, and then we'll go back into the breakout discussion about communication.
All right. Well, thank you. This is actually a topic that we just did, at our job the other day. And so, in different relationships, even relationships with you and your partner, potential, boyfriend, girlfriend, or even just in work relationships and family relationships, communication is important, because we have to learn to communicate, to hear another person, not just to respond to what they say, but to hear them, to actually hear them. And so communication involves saying active listening. It involves the way you say something. Saying, we were talking about, it's an interpersonal skill. It's one that has to be developed, because how you communicate with the other person depends on the level of what they receive from you. Because even if you are using some nonverbal cues, you may be saying something, your mouth may be saying one thing, but your body may be saying something totally different. And so, and then if you're not saying anything, then you're not communicating what needs to be said, so that there will be an understanding. And so without communication, I think that a relationship doesn't really stand a chance, because then two people will start to assume, but they really don't know, because no one takes the time to explain. I think with communication, it's very important, because it leaves the gateway into, like meeting, like you said, at peace, coming from, two sides of a story, to be able to understand what will we need to get to the next level. But if you can't communicate, then you're really left at a place where there will not be understanding. There will be a lot of misunderstanding, and just not properly being able to move to a place of where you all can actively listen to the other person. We also talked about just, I believe communication is very important, because it's just like, who wants to be in a relationship and we never really talk about anything, or we're not able to talk about the important matters. You can be, with someone and never really get to the meat of what needs to be, communicated, because maybe one person can't explain themselves and the other person is too reactive and they're not proactive. And so I just feel that communication is a big thing. We need to take a pause and break and learn how to, not be emotional when we're communicating. But to be rational and not irrational, because it helps the relationship, whatever type of relationship, friendship, marriage, boyfriend and girlfriend, work relationship. Communication is key.
All right, Jim. So you heard LaDonna Marie. She's brought up some very strong points in communication. So what do you have? I mean, if you just want to agree with everything she says, that's fine. If you have some additional points that you want to make, yeah, I mean, it's okay, because she covered a lot of from A to Z. So she may have G and I left, but I know she covered a lot of ground there.
I am part of the Rush Hour crew. Like, I'm Chris Tucker and everybody's Jackie Chan. I feel like telling them, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Like, people like look dazed and confused when you talk to them. They look like they're in space. They don't want to pay attention. And, it's the receiving, it's the giving and receiving. The giving part is when you talk to people. I think half of the people don't know what the English language is anymore, or its meaning. They talk about one thing, and then that's not really the point they're talking about. And you have to figure out what their point is that they're trying to get at, or you just basically tell them, you got to go around them on that point, Then when you try to talk to them again, yeah, but that's the point I was making. But the words you were saying was not the actual point. You have to get a better grasp on how to converse with people and getting your point across without going into a story, without, bringing up something unrelated to the topic and making people lose interest. On the receiving end, though, you have to pay attention. You can't be dazed and confused, okay? Don't be scared to say, I don't understand what's coming out of your mouth, it's people don't want to seem like A, they don't know English, B, that they don't want to seem like they're dumb and not understanding what the other person is saying, but maybe the other person's talking gibberish too. Don't be afraid to do these things. It's a lot of things get lost in translation. People's thoughts do not clearly come out into words most of the time. So if people have that disconnect with their brain, something else come out of their mouth, but that's not what they're really thinking. There has to be some type of correction. So it's to me, it's a little bit more, what your intent is, what you're trying to say, and make sure you clearly get your point across. And if your audience is really being perceptive, or if it just goes to one ear and out the other.
All right, Donnie, it's your turn while I write this down for the next point of discussion.
Yeah, that was pretty all encompassing. So I only have like a quick note, honestly. I believe LaDonna mentioned active listening. I think that's a big part of it, listening to understand and all that, because I think a lot of people misunderstand the purpose of communication, and they end up going into it rather than trying to find that piece that was mentioned earlier. They'll go into it looking at it as an opportunity to like flex their like intellect, or try to prove that they're right or they're the better person in a relationship or whatever. And that's counterproductive.
Yeah, so I wanted to jump right into this because Donna Marie said something that I thought was very important. And she said, communicate to hear, active listening, not to respond. Well, she didn't say it in that way, but I just jotted it down like that. She was saying listening, not listening to respond, but you should listen to hear what the person is saying. And I think it's important that we talk about this and talk about clarifying, because the whole point of communication should be clarity. And that's what so many people miss when they have discussion and they talk about things. They don't seek to clarify. A lot of times people ask questions to really get their own points of view across. So I may ask the Donna Maria a question, but I'm asking her a question because I really have something to say. So I'm getting her talking to answering my question, but it's really something that I want to say. It's not really me learning the perspective of LaDonna Marie. It's just me asking her things so that I can satisfy my insecurities or my thoughts or my fears or whatever it is that I want to know, but it's not even to understand the person's perspective. So I find that a lot of times people do that because they have something else that they want to ask after that. So they ask you to answer something, and then after that, they get something out again that they want to bring out, never listening to what you're saying to them, and or even when you say something, to receive clarity and have a discussion about it. So that I wanted to kind of talk about and talk about how harmful that can be when people do that. So LaDonna Marie, I don't know if you can help me out here. I think you can, because so far your batting average is like 1,000 all the time, so you're always able to hit something out the park.
Thank you. We bounce off of each other. I'm so glad that we always, have the mindset to grow, but to tell the truth. Cause what I'm saying, you got to stretch. When you said clarify, I put down, people, like you said, people being counterproductive. I think that so many ways, like how you explained it, people want to get their point across, but in communication, is we should be working for a common goal. And so what we bring to the communication, what we bring to each other, should be something to satisfy a goal. Even if we're communicating and we're clarifying something that we are displeased with, I think that we should, not saying that it's always been the case, because I remember when I used to pop off back in the day, because I wanted to be heard, because I felt like the other person, how you say, can you hear the words that come out? Like, you're not listening to me. Like, I know that I'm explaining this in a way that you should hear it, but then that comes with different people's upbringing. It comes with how your first foundation of conflict, of resolution, of taking in information. It comes with your background. And so, when we're talking to someone, clarifying what you said, being able to listen to a person and just say what you need to say and not pick apart what they say, like you said, already ready to have an answer as soon as they start talking. You haven't really even fully listened to what they said, but you want to clap back. You want to have something to say. And I think that's what ruins a lot of situations, because people are not really actively listening. I think when I researched that information, I think it says about 41% of people active listen, like 41%, and that's not good. That means you're not paying attention. Like Jim said, you're not really paying attention, and you're not taking the information that people are saying, or we can be saying tomato, the same thing, but you want to say it the way that you want to say it. And so not being able to totally clarify, that hurts so many relationships. The reason why we brought it up at work was because we feel like everybody just want to be heard. Everybody wants to shine. But at the end of the day, we are losing ground because we're not resolving anything. There's no conflict resolution. We're not solution focused because everybody wants to be heard, but nobody wants to hear what the other person has said. And so we felt like we should do a life skills, workshop on that. And we did an exercise where we had, each person to come up with some different things that they needed to say. It was called Crazy Sentence. And they had to put that into the sentence. And then the other people who were listening had to identify what they were saying and had to tell us what the other people had put in there, had slipped in. But then that showed who was listening and who wasn't. Because if you didn't listen, you weren't able to understand what they said. But if you did listen, you could give us pieces and parts of what they said. And so you had clarity, therefore you were listening.
All right, Jim. Okay. So you heard what LaDonna Marie said. She didn't say want, but that's people, what she just said that actually didn't display active listening skills. And I think that was sort of what you were talking about previously about understanding the words coming out of my mouth. But have you seen the effects of people experiencing this? So I don't want to go too far ahead. So let's kind of keep on topic there, because I want to be able to get Donnie to respond to this topic. But if you just want to, because you've kind of talked about it previously. So if you just want to let Donnie talk and give his perspective, because you actually started this discussion, that's fine, because I don't want to jump over it and then have to jump back on it. So what do you want to do?
You can go to Donnie. It's fine since I already jumped. That's
right. Okay. So since Jim kind of leapfrogged to where we were, like the Millennium Falcon, and he went into hyperspace to this point where we were going. All right, Donnie. So what do you have on the topic?
All I need is just a reminder of the original prompt. That's all I need.
So basically, we're talking about people not active listening, listening to just respond. So the anticipation of asking or the conversation and getting someone to talk is you having what you want to say next, whether it's in responding to what someone says in defense, or really just to get off your next talking point without even listening to what was said before you speak.
Oh yeah, I actually at one time used to do that. I might have mentioned it once before on an earlier episode. That sort of thing where you're listening to respond to get your point across, it'll always end up having long-term effects on a relationship. Namely, just in general, it'll end up with whoever is maybe less good at arguing, it'll leave them with some sort of complex, whether it be like an inferiority complex or something like that. And then you find yourself every time you're trying to discuss something, even if you're then trying to do it in a genuine way, that person is just going to think you're trying to prove them wrong. And I know, because I've had to deal with this before, it takes a lot of work to try to then come back from that. And I think people take for granted the lasting effects that can have with someone. people think that communication is a competition, whereas it isn't. It's meant to serve as a forum for problem solving. And what they end up doing is locking themselves into more problems without knowing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so I wanted to get into the next point of discussion is, so what is it that people are doing really? Why do people not active why do people not active listen? So I think that it has to do, I guess, with the individuality. So we have to sometimes train ourselves to listen to what people say, and I think that's a big handicap that a lot of people have in their lives, because they've never been in a position where, one, that people listen to them. So a lot of times we sort of repeat the cycle of what we've experienced, and we sort of project it onto other people. So we come from a place where people didn't listen to us and hear us out, and then we grow up and we basically turn into the same kind of person. Or you have the other way that some people do, but a lot of times than not, people sort of repeat the treatment that they receive, and they've been taught to become that person. So the point of this discussion today is really to be able to identify yourself as someone who knows how to active listen, or someone who just listens to respond, because I find the listen to respond can be very confrontational when there's a problem. So the whole idea of communication is not to cause conflict, but to, if there's a disturbance, to restore peace, or if there's a concern, to have your concern talked and to have clarity and understanding, so what you have to say in the other person's opinion. So I think the next topic has to be some of the issues, some of the struggles that we see people doing. And I'm going to have to talk about a main issue, which is insecurity. So when people are insecure and they let their insecurity get the best of them, and it dictates how they interact with the other person, whether insecurity turns into pride, a false sense of security. So we have to really discuss in those instances, because those are the instances that are going to block proper communication. So I think we need to discuss those things, and we need to sort of, get people identifying what are some of the things that are preventing them from proper communication. So I think, so is that something, LaDonna Marie, you can speak on? The thumbs up if you can, thumbs down if you need me to talk a little more.
I was gonna say, Jim, do you want to grab it first?
No, ladies first. Ladies first.
Ladies first. Okay. All right, Queen Latifah.
All right. So this is really, really, an interesting topic, because like what Donnie was saying, it's so true. That even if you've been in a situation, and I can speak from experience on this subject, okay, of communication, because I'm gonna tell you, I was a 14-year-old hearing from the Lord, and this has nothing to do with relationships, but like in a relation, well, yeah, it does in both ways. But I was hearing the proper things to do or say or communicate to others, from the Lord. And everybody else that I was trying to tell, they would not listen. So they told me I was just, saying, making stuff up. They didn't believe me. Even the boyfriends that I probably were with, they really, didn't, just brushed what I said off. It was just always like they didn't want to hear. And so just like Donnie said, it had an effect on me, because it made me feel like, well, maybe I'm not communicating what I'm hearing correctly, or I'm not saying what I need to say. Therefore, sometimes I didn't say. I stopped saying as much as I knew. I stopped saying as much. And that had a effect on me personally. But then the second part, it was for me in my life, God would never let me stay in that moment. So he kept giving me insight. He kept giving me revelation. So what I had to do was I had to start going to the other people than the people who would not listen. Because the communication that I was giving, whether it was loving, it was encouraging, whether it was I was, communicating something that I did not like, they wouldn't receive it. So they made me feel like I was wrong. In the essence, they were, and I was right. So I had an issue with just speaking up for a while, because I was like, everybody was always, you know what I'm saying, had something wrong with my communication. But the Lord had to shine it on me that sometimes darkness does not like light, and that I was speaking the right things. They just didn't want to hear it. So here lies in now, I have to fully be who I've been created to be. And I have to communicate things, even when it's hard to say some things. But I always teach my children, in which I had to learn, you can communicate something to someone as long as you say it in a way that's respectful. I believe in sharing, because sometimes, just like I learned today when I was at church, the truth is not always going to be something that's so light and fluffy. Like, you know, sometimes even when but the way that you say it, you have to give it to a person in a way that, you know what I'm saying, that they can understand it, that it's not demeaning, that it's not threatening, that it's not tearing them down. And I think a lot of people have not had the proper training on how to communicate, or how to express their feelings and emotions, or how even to identify what I feel in order to properly communicate something to someone else. I try to do my best with my children. I know that, I mean, they're still gonna, make mistakes. They're still gonna have to learn on their own. But I try to at least have them to identify, like if one of my sons is angry about something, even though I acknowledge his anger, but I let him know, what I'm saying, identify, like I'm feeling angry right now, because you need to be able to identify. But then you know the feeling, but you choose your reaction. So I'm that type of person. You have to choose how you're going to respond. So even if he's in a moment that he may be upset and angry, I don't want you to be able to, when you're communicating with someone, because of your anger, you still can be angry, sin not, but you can be angry and communicate what you dislike with your words, instead of with positive words, or how you're feeling, but you just have to be able to explain it. So I wrote down I wrote down at first when you started talking about, we have to learn how to unlearn. There are a lot of unhealthy things that people just do that's not right, but it's been done for so long that you think it's right. Or, you know what I'm saying, you see everybody in your surroundings that, people feel like when they holler at you, like it's supposed to be more important. But hollering doesn't do anything but you raising your voice. It doesn't get your message across any more than if you were calmly just say, hey, this is what I got going on here. But people feel like if I raise my voice, you're going to hear me, and this is the way you're going to understand. And so there lies in, if you do that to that child, then guess what? He's going to grow up and do it to the next child or his child, because that's what he learned, that this is the way you talk to somebody when you want to get their attention. And so we have to unlearn the things that we've learned, because it will give you a false sense of pride. I wrote down like the false sense of security, because the upbringing of your roots, wherever your roots are, those are what's going to speak. And I'm going to be quiet, but I just want to say that sometimes, and I know people do the best that they can, because I had to just learn that sometimes our parents or people who trained us didn't get it from their parents. So that saying is is the truth, that sometimes people cannot give you what they didn't have. So for me, even if I started in some of those things, because I used to be a hollerer too, but then I had to understand, like, what is that doing? So then I had to go back and change that thing and just come from a place of, explaining what this, that, and the other is. And so we really just got to get to the root of what we've learned, and then start to look at it, not always looking at ourselves with an accusatory or oh, you messed up, but like, how can I better myself? Like, look at it from a stance of how can I change some things that no longer work for me, and move forward.
Okay. All right, Jim, go ahead. It's your turn.
I agree with Adana, especially in the upbringing part, and talking louder to get your point across. I've been many recipients on that, and also the hive mind group speak mentality. Everybody has the same idea, so it must be right. whatever. I had to discern myself with people who didn't have a better way of communicating without emotion attached to it. Also with the ideology of, you just talking louder and cursing at people just gonna make you seem like you know what you're talking about. So I did like what Donna said. I just stay quiet and let them fall on, with their advice just fall on their face. And, eventually, my egotistical will come in with the I told you so. And, when people think that they're right, give them a sense of arrogance to talk down to people. And, it just seemed like, oh, well, should have done this, should have done that, woulda, coulda, should have type thing. Some people do take it too far, is a way of saying, that they were right, but most of the people, when they say they're right, they don't come with a solution for the problem or the issue at hand. Most people are looking for a solution, even if you have a solution that seems so far-fetched, or maybe not too easily processed by other people because they're not used to that way of doing things. You have to, like what Don said, you have to come across, not like as a know-it-all, but someone who can try to come up with a plan or a vision to help someone if they feel like, this way was not the way to do it. To me, sometimes these type of conversations become a domination piece of saying my idea is more dominant than yours, or it makes more sense, instead of just saying, here's this view, here's this view. These two views may be conflicting, but you know what? We can at least come up to something, or we don't have to agree with it at all, but we have the type of mutual respect to say that, these are my views, or this is the view here at hand. And everybody's going to have a counter argument to a view. And it just seems like, what is your tolerance level for taking it? And that's really what it is. What is your tolerance level for accepting another person's point of view without you being, saying it's totally wrong or right? Because for most of the conversations I've seen, the views of other people, they do have valid reasons. And, you have to respect that in that way. The point is, for me, it's not to bring someone to my side or my opinion, but it's just to hear them out and see if there's another way of doing things that maybe they never knew about, and maybe they could come up with another idea. Not exactly the way they change the way of thinking, but to say that there's other ways or ideas to do something.
All right, Donnie, it's your go. What do you have for us?
Rather than like a personal anecdote or anything like that, I honestly sat and thought of just some potential reasons why people end up unable to properly communicate in this way. That's all right. I believe you mentioned this briefly. There's this idea of insecurity. Plenty of people end up fearing a certain outcome so significantly that they start acting in a way that eliminates the possibility of anything else. Beyond that, I think you might have also started to touch on this. There's this idea that people weren't, it comes from the background. We've mentioned this previously, where they weren't validated in any way by their parents or whoever was around when they were in developing, and as a result, they find themselves unable to provide that kind of validation for anybody else. There's also, a big one. I guess this kind of ties into when we were talking about the pretty rich people last weekend. But there's also this group of people that because growing up or just in life, they were surrounded by people who would coddle them, or yes men or whoever else. They assume that everyone will give them that same kind of like worship-like treatment. And as a result, like they're unable to show any sort of basic respect to people. So everything that you say will go in one ear and out the other immediately. And I had just one more example, which was there are also a lot of people who end up becoming complacent in relationships when they feel like they've already gone and won the person. And their significant other then becomes just like any other person in the world. So they feel free to ignore, disrespect, whatever, them just because they don't feel like they have to work anymore.
I agree with that. And you made me think about something when you were talking just now, or while you were talking, excuse me. And that was people also communicate to self-sabotage. And what does that mean? So you'll have people that they'll have these discussions because their endpoint really is to cause a rift, to say, oh, I was right, this is not going to work, or cause you. So you'll have people who are not really ready for relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's romance or anything else. And what they'll do is they'll ask questions that they know will trigger people, or they'll keep doing it until they can find the trigger point in the person. And then they don't let up on it. And even when the person comes out to them and says, listen, I don't like these questions, I don't like the way you're talking to me, they won't let up. So you have a level of people who don't really want to be with these people because they're not ready to be with someone, and they'll find a way to cause a rift with that person and says, see, that's exactly what I was talking about. So once they trigger the person and it becomes a conflict, then now they point the finger at the person that they've triggered to say, now I this is exactly what I was talking about. See, I told you, I knew you weren't serious. I knew it. I know you didn't want this relationship, and things like that. So you have so many people that they'll use communication as a way to force someone out of a relationship, and they'll push and they'll push and they'll push. And the next thing you know, that now it's at a place where it's irreparable damage because the person has pushed so much that the other person doesn't even want to be involved anymore. So with that point of discussion, LaDonna Marie, have you ever experienced that or seen anyone do that, or do you have any knowledge of people doing that? Because I actually do know people who've done it, and it's a very serious problem because it's a repeat offense. So they'll do it for every relationship, and then they'll say, man, I can't find anyone. And then that's usually the end result of these type of push away communication tactics.
Yeah, and to be honest, when we're getting into that type of back and forth, that's sometimes I mean, that's kind of like emotional abuse for people who continue to get people like that verbal. And many people don't talk about that because it's really, I mean, all of them are not right, but it's done on the regular. People talking to people any kind of way, pushing people in conversation, igniting certain things in people. That's one of the things I wrote down on the paper, was to know thyself is really important for people to know themselves when they go into certain situations. And for me, I've had to learn over the year how not to let like different people, let the words that they say upset me, because I know that it's meant to. I've had to learn how to just let it roll off, back and stumping under my feet, or to just listen to hear and not, like not filter through all of the foolishness. And I often tell my children that, you don't have to argue, like two fools can't, I mean, a fool can't argue by themselves. And so you don't have to be a part of every argument. And you don't have to, be engaged in something where someone is going to push you to a place that, you may not be returned, or some words or things may be spoken. And so that's a whole lot of stuff with just immaturity of character. And it does come back to, like who you are. I'm not saying, because I mean, like back in the day, I mean, I'm still small, but I had that I'm gonna take care of myself. And so any situation that went on, if someone said something to me, I probably would say something back to them. But at a certain time in my life, it was just like that. I don't like confusion. I don't like, drama. I don't like all of that. And so when those situations started, or when people began to do that, I just would, like not engage. And so we have to understand and be mindful of the people that we are in relationships with, and who we are communicating with. And when we see the flags and we see these, identifying these things, then we just should, understand that if this is not the moment where we can get whatever we're trying to communicate across, then it's okay to walk away. It's okay to have a conversation at another time, because I think a lot of people, and you talking about different things that you can do to help. I know Donnie was talking about a little bit of that, but sometimes it's okay to just be like, hey, this conversation is kind of heated. Let us come back to it. Like, you can walk away from things and not just stay in the fire. You know what I'm saying, when people are coming at you, because I'm not saying it's not going to be out there, but we do, as people individually, we have to learn about where we're putting what situations we're putting ourselves in, and how you have to treat other people, how to train them how to treat you. And so if that's something that I don't want to be around, very, like, even for like curse words, I'm not going to say that I never curse, but at this point in my life, I do not. And so even when my students would come around me, I don't even have to say it anymore, because there's already a standard that even if they slip out, they were like, okay, I'm sorry. And I don't take it personal, because I know that there's a standard. I don't have to holler at you and say, don't come in here with that. You already know that there's a standard. And so you understand that I need to change my communication, or the way that I communicate, or just, you acknowledge that this is something that this is not for this space. Then I'll make sure that I try to correct it. And so if we as people start to look at ourselves and know thyself, and know the situations that we put ourselves in, and not, like I talked about before, not be irrational. That's the reason why I talk a lot about emotional wellness and emotional stability, because if you are not grounded, and if you're not healed or wounded, and if it's childhood or even if it's current, those situations are going to ignite you. But at some point in time, we have to grow above those, and we have to, learn how to overcome that situation. And I'm speaking.
All right. So Jim, so I kind of want to switch gears here. So now that you heard what Adana Marie says, because it's funny, I wrote that down, so I don't even have to talk about that. And in that discussion, it was bully questioning, when you talk about emotional abuse and things like that. So that was what I was gonna premise that under. So I was talking about bully questioning. So when we talk about people who do that, so what do you think? What do you tell some? I mean, how do we help someone that does those things? What would you suggest for someone that does those type of things? If you were a friend of someone like that, how do you even broker that discussion to kind of get someone off of that? How, as if you're someone's friend, and hopefully they understand that, what advice would you offer someone that was doing those kind of things?
First, I'll ask to see if they realize that they're actually doing it. Usually, like I said, from learned behavior, so they might think that's normal. You try to find out where their head's at first, and then you try to help them with with a course correction. Saying, well, don't you find that line of questioning very forwarding, or stuff like that, and then you try to dissect them through layers, because it's not good. They're not going to change their ways or their opinions in a couple of hours, especially if it's ingrained in them, especially if they're around it and still around that type of behavior. It's hard to subtract them from that environment. So you're going up against experience, wisdom, and surroundings, and that type of bullying. And sometimes, I won't say you can't beat it, but it's hard to overcome for people to do that, because you're asking them to adjust the way they're thinking, and it's been ingrained in them for what, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. So for the first person to try and change them, you have to realize it's going to be hard. You have to have patience. Second, you might not fully change them. You might have to realize that you might not fully change them. You might just get them to ease back on what they're doing, and then the type of bully pulpit that they're, or their soapbox that they stand on. But you have to understand, like, their nature is to do that. That's what they know. If they didn't, take like a debate class, if it wasn't ingraining them in some other outside environment when they was younger, it will take time, and you have to be patient with the person. That's the first thing I would have to say. It takes a lot of patience. and it takes a lot of work. For me to actually tell that to a person, I'll try to get them from where they're coming from first. So I'll get from their analysis, their point of view, stuff like that. And then I'll try to break it down to them, piece by piece with their line of question, like, hey, aren't you being a little bit too aggressive? Don't you think is there another way to get your point across without seeing, you think you're being 100 or, that type of mentality, that aggressiveness means that you're being real. And that's not necessarily true. It's just being that you're trying to get them to do something or trying to get them to your point across, and they're just folding. They're not agreeing, they're folding because they don't want to be in your space of how you're questioning people. So I will definitely try to get their information on their background and just chisel. It's a chisel and a marble and a sculpting. You just gotta chip away at it, to be honest with you.
So is it possible to be like,
how dare you?
Can you talk to someone like that? Or, I mean, how do you approach someone? Do you feel like it has to, do you approach someone sensitively, or can you be like, listen, what's going on here? Like, I mean, I guess it depends on you got to know the person, right? Yeah. You got to know the person. Yeah. Because if there's somebody that's in an argumentative, if they just argumentative people, I think it's going to be an argument regardless. If they're argumentative, you can't say it peaceful I mean, but peace is always the best approach, because if somebody becomes argumentative, you can show them why are you becoming argumentative, because my approach wasn't to cause an argument. Yeah. All right, Donnie. So, Jim dropped some jewels there, and LaDonna Marie spoke on a lot. So what do you have on the discussion at this point in time?
Oh, I wanted to continue with that conversation Jim was getting at, with like how you deal with someone like that. In my experience, what I've ended up doing is, what you were just asking, can you go in with like the how dare you type of mindset? Yeah, for sure, there are people who can respond to that well, but I just kind of avoid that approach entirely, because I don't want to deal with people's pride if that's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So generally, just to strip away pride, I'm making sure that when this conversation is starting, it's like, yeah, we're not here worrying about are you bad, or are you doing the wrong thing or whatever. That's not what it's about. How I usually phrase it is, do you think what you're doing is working? That's where I usually like to go, because that's neutral. It's just like, are things making you happy, or is it going well? Are you stressed out about it all the time? That sort of thing, because it then forces them to just consider not how the other person is feeling, but it makes them think about how do they feel about the situation. If they can't get to the place where they can like consult the other person and really care about what's going on, they can at least have that conversation with themselves, right? And then from there, as Jim said, it is kind of a chiseling situation where you have to slowly work the way in. Another big part of that, honestly, that you have to hit on is, you always got to ask them, if this is an issue that they're having with their partner, what is it that they dislike, for lack of better words, about their partner? And then you got to find out if they've actually communicated that to their partner, because a lot of people, what they end up doing is they have a problem and then they blow it up and then they have arguments about it, but they never actually took the time out to let the other person know that they had an issue. So whether or not that person was going to be into coming to a compromise, they eliminated that possibility ahead of time. So yeah, whenever I have to talk to someone about what their misgivings are, I don't approach it in a way that is directly trying to call attention to their issue, to the fact that they're behaving poorly, more so that something's happening that isn't even working for them, that could be improved.
Good job. All right, so here's the thing that I wanted to bring up while we're talking about this. So definitely know, you gotta, when they talk about giving a speech, you have to know your audience. You have to know who you're talking to. Hopefully you've known your friend or whoever the person is long enough to know what you can say to the person so that they can understand. Some people just don't understand, no matter how much logic that you use. But I was listening to a Kevin Samuels video. It was actually a reaction to Kevin Samuels videos. He was talking to this woman. I think she was in her 30s or something like that. And she was telling her story about something. So basically, I'm gonna try to keep the story really brief so I don't waste a lot of time talking about it, but to make the point. So in the story, she met this guy, and then like a month after she met the guy, she got pregnant. Now, the guy didn't want any kids. She decided she wanted to have the kid anyway. So this went on he stayed with her throughout the pregnancy. So then something happened where they broke up and he blocked her on Facebook, WhatsApp, everything. So the moral of the story was Kevin was trying to get her to see what she did wrong. And in the discussion, he asked her, well, what happened that he blocked you? Because he said that a man doesn't go from argument to blocking you, right? He says it usually don't go from I have an argument and then a block. So she basically said that the argument was about her using the word rebuttal, and he disagreed how the word was used. So she decided to tell him, oh, I'm just going to take a dictionary and show you what it meant. And it's interesting, although she tried to use that as the only reason why they broke up, and he said that she was disrespecting, but to me, the length that she went through to point out his error showed me that there was actually a level of disrespect that she had towards him, because there are people who say and do things wrong all the time. There's just certain things you point out that are wrong. And then there's certain things you just have to just let it go. So if he's saying, the moral of the story is if you're having an argument with someone, to create a sub argument based on you needing to pick at somebody, it shows a bad communication level. And just the mere fact that she thought it was okay to have a sub argument based on rebuttal, that he was mistaken. During an argument is probably not the time to bring out that you don't know what you're talking about, because now you've created two arguments instead of one. You have the initial argument, and then you have the secondary argument, to which now you've actually added fuel to the original fire. So I think the point people have to understand is when there's a disagreement, that the communication has to be, how do you bring it back to a peaceful nature? How, if there's one person that is angry and or even if you're angry, somebody has to be the level-headed one in the discussion. So the point of bad communication is you have to bring it back to good communication. The first thing I'm going to advise to people is not create a sub argument during your argument. So don't create an additional level of argument and disagreement just because you're upset from the first argument. The point of somebody being triggered is not to further trigger somebody. You have to, argument should always lead to a resolution. And the problem is, so many times when we have disagreements with stuff, it often goes unresolved. People will stop arguing and fussing, but whatever the issue is doesn't go unresolved. So LaDonna Marie, I mean, in that instance, when we're talking about that, what advice do you have to add to that? You've heard my specific sentiments. What do you have to offer? And if you don't, if you just want to solidify what I say, or just add something that I missed, feel free to do whatever you feel at your leisure.
Okay, I just want to, go with what you said, because yeah, I mean, that's how people in situations, we have to learn not to argue, just to listen. And then when we're approaching someone to talk to them, we should be solution focused, but we know that that's not always the mindset, but we should be solution focused. Even as the other gentleman said, coming to them, just asking a question of, saying like, is this working for you? Because you shouldn't be at a level of where you're already, at a high point, because even coming to someone to talk to them about something, they probably going to be defensive. Like I said, if this is something that they've always done, and if they don't see an issue or a problem with it, for me, one thing that I would normally do is I would wait a while before I even mention something to someone, but I will continue to model good behavior. Like I will continue to model, like, you know what I'm saying, how communications or how conversations are supposed to be, are done. And even if I'm in a conversation with someone and they're coming from a negative place, I probably would spin it around and, you know what I'm saying, communicate it back to them in a different way. Because if this is a place that how they have been raised, it's really going to be harder for them to, if they don't recognize it as being something like what Donnie said is good. Because he, like, when he asked them, can you, is this working for you? Because, if you get them to be able to have some conversation and they get an aha moment that, saying maybe there is something wrong with this, or this is how I've always done it. You know what I'm saying? If they get to look at what they've done, they can put into words their own actions and feelings about it. Because sometimes sometimes you always have to self-reflect. And people don't do that, so they're not able to see themselves. And so we should, come to them with a solution mindset. But I want to tell you that in most cases that I've seen, it takes a longer time. Like you said, the chisel, we working with it. I mean, I've had some students or people that I had to tarry with for a long time. But the end result is just like, I can see the turn. I can see that, once I keep standing my ground on proper communication and how to treat a person and, how do you respond even when someone, is angry or however they are, if you model to them, what is best and what is needed. And then sometimes, just add that into conversation. When you're not even when they've done something, you can just talk about, something that you realized. And so I think that everybody has so many valid points. And to anyone that's out there listening, I think that we just each day we all need to take a self-reflection of how we are, how we approach things. Have we healed from things that have gone on in our life? Because how you show up is a representation of everything that you've gone through and what you display to the world. I could just say for myself, and then I'm going to be finished. Even for me, the battle was for me in the beginning, should I be who God has called me to be, or should I be what I see and what I hear? Because nobody wanted me to be positive and encouraging. Nobody believed, in everything. But I had to stand alone and say, even though you want me to snap back, crack, you know what I'm saying? Even though you might want me to, be negative or this right here, I can't do it, because that means I'm not even being authentic to myself. And so we have to be able to hold on to our ground, even though for me, it took longer for them to, not that I was trying to prove anything to anyone, but some of the main ones who said different things about me or did not agree with things that, I communicate to them that was a part of something that I wanted them to know. Now I have outlived all of those, those things. And so time will tell. And then we just also make sure that we self-reflect each and every day.
Oh, those are definitely words. So, and by the way, I didn't play that audio clip on purpose. I was trying to scroll back and somehow that button got stuck. All right, so now here's the very important portion of the show, and it's relationship braces. So, Jim, now we come to you. What is your word of advice for us? Bringing relationships together, bringing hearts together in the world of relationship braces. Jim, it is your turn. Okay, go ahead.
LaDonna really brought up a good point of consistency in your approach when you are having discussions and things like that, standing your ground. I think that, consistency matters, and that, you will get different responses from people depending on how consistent you are in your approach. And if they see that, you're not going to relent, or not relent, but you're not going to give too much leeway and you're not going to tolerate certain things, I think that people's approach will change in how they converse with you or have a discussion with you. It could be good or bad, but the approach will be different. Secondly, is the whole resolution to an argument or discussion. I've noticed a lot of people don't want a resolution. I've noticed that people will bring that same type of argumentative up at their convenience to prove a point on a totally different topic or argument in general. And that is something that is very manipulative for people to do that, because you're not seeking anything but just more discord or chaos, and people thrive in that. I know a lot of individuals who thrive in that type of thinking, and that is one of the most toxic things I've ever seen in my life, that you're not here, that you're not discussing really for a resolution. You don't want a resolution. You want something to be discontinued because you like living in that chaotic type of environment. Usually when I run into individuals like that is, one, I take away that and I make up my own solution and go with it. And then when they ask me why I do that, I says, well, you complained about it, but I didn't say it, but I didn't come with anything. I says, well, I did, because it seemed like you didn't want to. Sometimes, you have to play certain mind games with people to make them realize that this is not what you really wanted, but I've taken that step to make sure that I've taken the biggest step. And I'll just say, I've done this, this, and this, it's up to you to accept it or not. I am trying. And it's not even to be facetious with people, but, it's just like you trying to take what they said seriously, even though they're not being serious and doing anything to help resolve it.
All right. Now, I think Jim brought them back together. All right, Donnie. So Jim actually brought up some good points. LaDonna Marie hit a grand slam. So now you're at the plate. Bring us home, and then we can kind of close out this episode.
Yeah, sure. I think because arguments, discussions, whatever you want to call them, of this nature are so emotionally based, people don't have enough structure in them. That's one thing that I would recommend, and I'll explain that in a moment. But real quick, just to hit on something you mentioned earlier, the sub argument / side argument thing, definitely a thing to avoid. We can't get any more of time. It's an incredibly valuable resource, right? So if you're going to start discussing other things, you're not going to actually solve your original issue or the things that you just decided to have a side argument about. And that's a disrespect to both people's time. That aside, I think something that far too few people do is actually setting time aside to have these important conversations. I think people are very inclined to they just come home, or their partner comes home and then boom, start an argument. Or maybe they think of something and then on the spot it happens. But then the issue there is whatever else was going on in that person's day is gonna weigh in. Maybe someone had a bad day, maybe whatever happens, that's all compounding in that one moment. Then it's gonna feel like somebody got ambushed, whatever. The best way to go about doing it is to set aside time ahead of time. Just make it clear, hey, we need to talk about this. Ask someone works for them, and then boom, you can go do it. That way you can avoid, as I just said, any sort of outside influences that could affect the discussion. You can make sure that it's clear to both people in the relationship that there's a commitment to work on it, because that causes problems in itself. And just practically speaking, it gives both people time to actually gather their thoughts and think about what's actually going wrong in the relationship.
That's good. So now we're going to bring it back to the future. And I want to pretty much close out this episode here. For those of you who don't know, that's from Back to the Future. That's why I played it. Hopefully we'll know that for next time. But anyway, the point is really understanding communication how well are you at communicating? And if you have problems communicating, I would say work on that. Whether it's seeking counseling on how to communicate, or even, sometimes watching videos help. I've learned a lot from watching videos, sometimes exactly not what to say, sometimes what to say, some of the things that I've done in life, mistakes that I've made. Sometimes you can learn those. I've even learned from these podcasts that we're doing right now. Sometimes you talk and you can hear other people's perspectives, or sometimes just thinking about a topic to discuss often brings you to a revelation about yourself. You never know. There's always something to learn every day. If a person wakes up and they feel like they have nothing to learn, pity that person, because there's always something new every day for us to learn and for us to fix in life and in ourselves. So I think I'm going to give everybody a closeout, and then we'll close out. So LaDonna Marie, that was my closeout. What do you have for a closeout statement there?
Basically, I mean, I love your closeout, and I love all of the music throughout the show. But I really want people to just learn how to self-reflect. And one thing that I would have you to do, I would say journal your, emotions and your feelings, or even the things that you would have to say, so you can kind of take a look at, log, your life and your responses, and then you'll be able to see clear cut, what I'm saying, like how you feel, at the rate of how often do you feel this way, and then maybe you can see if there are some things that we need to change. I love the way that you said that it is not something that we see that we need to improve, then we may need to look, because I believe in being a lifelong learner and believing in, that's why personal development is something that you do daily. You have to, in every aspect of your life. And so if you're out there listening to the show, we stand with you. We've all grown through some things. We're still growing through some things, but just take a moment and jot down some things in your life that are going on, and kind of keep a log, and, empower yourself. Listen to, like you said, I listen to podcasts, listen to more podcasts like this, and just listen to to gain some new information, or read a book about something that how to solve a solution, so that you just won't continue to rehearse the problem.
Or go to ladonnamarie.org and purchase some books there. There's a lot of stuff a lot of information that you can get from her books, and self-reflecting and learning. Trust me, I've read quite a few of her books, and they've even helped me. So you can go there, ladonnamarie.org, and purchase something today. Okay, she didn't tell me to do it. I'm honestly speaking that from the heart. All right, Jim. So here you go. We're back to the future. Now, what do you have to tell Marty McFly and Doc?
You gotta do something about your kids. No, I'm just kidding. I agree with what both of you say. I also want to add that, always come to a resolution. Please don't leave things as open-ended or unresolved as possible. It'll just fester, and it will come back to rear its head again. Try to come up with something that is not one-sided, or feel like one person is gaining more than another. It's has to be mutual for everyone, and try to, but definitely what LaDonna and Dr. says, look at other podcasts. You are not alone. And I think that's what most people are thinking, that they are alone in this, you're isolated. But there's there are communities out there that can relate to the topics that you're having problems with. If it's, comprehending from thought to mouth, and from mouth to ears to correct comprehension, there are people, there are other people who have that problem. They can really help you in trying to process your thoughts and process other people's thoughts. So giving and receiving those type of things, there are a lot of help for that. And to get, that type of self-growth, know that you're not the only person that goes through that. It's good to talk it out with other people who have similar experiences with that. And you may come up with ideas and solutions that you never thought of, because other people have been through it. So remember, you're not alone in these things. And, if you have to seek out help or seek out others, don't be afraid to. You'll find there's a lot more people in the same boat than you may realize.
All right, Donnie. So here we go, rounding it out.
I think my last words are, just be sure to treat anything in your life with the amount of respect it deserves based on how much you value it. If a relationship's important to you, make sure that the appropriate amount of time and commitment are being put into it.
Oh, that's pretty good. We have one more comment here. Okay, special guest, what do you have to say?
Hello, everybody.
Okay, what's your comment? Please, what's your last comment?
Don't make someone else clean up your mess.
There you go. I agree with that. President Barack Obama, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, do not have someone else clean up your own mess. I think that's a very good point. Now, he loves to tell us that quite often. I think he may have told us that last week as well, but it's always true. We have to learn how to fix things, especially when we broke them. You know, it's the hardest thing for people to do sometimes is just be humble themselves, admit that they're wrong, and forgive and ask for forgiveness. Those are the most important things that we can do in relationships. Be understanding, allow ourselves to forgive and ask forgiveness of others, and even give when the other person doesn't forgive or even feels that they are not at fault, because it may be with God's will, they will see the fault of their ways. And believe me, anything is possible and miracles do happen. With that being said, this is Jonathan St. James, along with LaDon Marie, Jim, Donnie St. James, and this is Straight to Truth. Good night, all. You can all say good night.
Right.